further our own wisdom, Lord. Lord, just ask that you just be with everyone here and just keep us all safe, Lord. Just thank you for all that you do. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. Okay. So, I know it was 2 weeks ago, but who did we talk about 2 weeks ago? In chapter 3. Just for a quick bit of review. Correct. We talked about Ehud. And I'm not going to make you guys rehash all that, but basically, Ehud was this guy who the Bible recognizes as being left-handed, or possibly ambidextrous. Little vague, given details mentioned in other places. But went in and basically killed this king of Moab in one of the absolute savviest pieces of finesse and assassination. There we go, assassination ever. And so yeah, Ehud, as far as we understand it, was probably the last or the most recent major judge up to this point. At the end of chapter 3, there's the mention of this guy Shamgar, who killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad, which is just crazy. But that's all that's given, and Shamgar isn't mentioned again. However, Ehud sees a little bit of just a quick little shout out at the beginning of chapter 4, which leads most historians to believe that he was probably a major one, where Shamgar may have been a little bit more localized. So, going into chapter 4, let's get someone to read the first 3 verses, if I could. Oh, I got ping jockey typing. Ah, all right, Joe, you win this round. Go ahead.
Verse 3.
Through verse 3. Yep, 1 through 3.
And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord when Ehud was dead. And the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel.
Thank you. So last week we talked about Ehud, and so here we kind of pick up where that was. Now Ehud was by numerically, Ehud was the most the longest ruling, we'll say, judge of them all, in that he ruled 80 years after he killed Eglon. And so Israel had peace for 80 years, and it was great. But here in verse 1, we see that Ehud, as all men do, he dies. And as per usual in the book of Judges, just this cycle going on, the people of Israel again did what was evil on the side of the Lord when Ehud was dead. So, which is more of the same, and get used to reading stuff like that. So last week we had the king of Moab, who's the bad guy. This time we have this guy named Jabin, who's king of Canaan. Now, when we're talking about this, you have to understand the region of Canaan. Certain things, we understand that there are regions where people can dominate, and then the oppression or the region of dominance is specified to certain areas around the Promised Land, around Palestine. Now, when it says king of Canaan, this guy dwelt in the north. He was hanging out in this place called Harosheth, and the New King James calls it Harosheth of the Gentiles, right, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, because in the ESV it calls it Harosheth Hagoyim, which I'm assuming means of the Gentiles. But that would be to distinguish it from the rest of the land, which was, dwelt in by the Israelites. And so we come to verse 3, and it says, the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, because this guy, because this Jabin and his commander Sisera had 900 chariots of iron. Now, we've talked about this. We've talked about the what chariots, how they were like vastly superior technological weapons because they could let you take horses in the battle, carry more men, and gave you a massive advantage in combat. And the Israelites didn't have them. They didn't have those, so that formulated a problem. This guy had 900. Automatically a problem. Now, do you remember what I said last week? We had the king of Eglon, and the people of Israel cried out to God for salvation after how many years? Do you remember?
Was it 18?
18 years. Well, this time it's like the people of Israel are getting lazier because it took an extra 2 years this time for them to be like, I wonder if maybe this sin and this depression are related. And this is the first time we see this, because we've seen that the Israelites were under another nation before, but this is the first time where it says that Jabin oppressed the people of Israel cruelly. So it's not just this ruling over the land. It's just mistreatment and overall just heavy oppression that this guy is leading on. So we've got King Jabin, who is being this just overall just really super mean guy to the Israelites, and he's ruling from kind of the northwest, close to the Mediterranean Sea in the land of Palestine. It would be upward in the western portion of Galilee, as we would understand. Okay, so that's what we've got going on right now. This is our situation. We have the bad guy, we have the situation, and we have the people of Israel after 2 decades finally crying out to the Lord, saying, "God, could you help us?" All right. Any questions so far? I see no typing, so we shall continue on. All right. Could I get now? This next bit's going to be a little long, but could I get someone to read verses 4 through 10? Oh, wise rat, coming through in the clutch. Go ahead, sir. And actually, I forgot to do something. So
now Deborah the prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at the time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. The people of Israel came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you, go gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun? And I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hands."
Okay. I'm going to stop you there just for a second. I'll let you continue in a moment, but there are a few things I want to cover. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun a bit there, Wise. Okay, so we're introduced first off to Deborah, who is this prophetess, and she is already established here as judging Israel, right? And she lived in what was described as the hill country of Ephraim, or however you want to pronounce it. And so we're introduced to her, and just from some of the stuff that I read in regards to cultural understanding, rulers would generally be known as, or would become known, or their location would be known by certain landmarks. And in this instance, it's a tree. It actually bears her name, the Tree of Deborah, or the Palm of Deborah, between Ramah and Bethel, which is kind of more in the middle south, kind of in the southern mid portion of Israel, down in the region of Ephraim. And so she is judging Israel, and she sends for this guy named Barak, the son of Abinoam. And she calls from this place named in Kadesh Naphtali. Now, does Naphtali mean anything to anybody? Have you guys ever heard of Naphtali or Kadesh Naphtali?
Tribe of Naphtali?
Yes, it is a tribe, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. The tribe of Naphtali, or Naphtali, or however you want to pronounce it, it's fun stuff, is way up in the north. And so Deborah, who is kind of, not quite, but kind of a bit ways, she's across the nation a bit, and calls for this guy, being a prophetess and having the word of the Lord spoken to her. She says, "Hey, let's get this guy down here because I got something to say." And so Barak, being a good boy, comes down and he meets with Deborah. And so, excuse me, she makes this statement. She says, "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you?" Now, I've seen different people interpret this different ways. Some people are saying is that this is not like a callback saying, "Hey, didn't you know this already?" But it's more of this emphasis, saying it's like, "Hey, I know that God has commanded you to do this. I am relaying this to you." Other people think that God did make it known to Barak, and Deborah is just kind of, reissuing the command to Barak. And so she says, "Go gather your men at Mount Tabor," and we'll get to a bunch of these locations here in a bit. "Taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali, where you're from, and the people of Zebulun." And Zebulun's another tribe that's pretty close, south of the people of Naphtali. And then and it says, "The word of the Lord, I will draw out Sisera, the general of the bad guys, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand." Okay, so we have this order issued. Regardless of whether Barak got this beforehand or this is his first time hearing it, we have very clear instructions given as to what he is supposed to do. All right? We good? Any questions so far? Also, welcome Onger's cancel. Wise Rat, feel free to pick up again. I apologize for breaking it up, but all the way through verse 10, sir.
From verse 8, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go." And she said, "I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman." Then Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh.
One more verse.
And Barak called out Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went with him. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you. Okay. This is probably the portion of Deborah's story that is most famous, or infamous, if you will, is the idea of this guy Barak, who is militarily supposed to be leading Israel on this campaign to overthrow Jabin, king of the Canaanites, and free Israel from his rule, from this oppression. And so Deborah says, "Hey, God's commanded you to get 10,000 men from Zebulun and Naphtali and go up to war, and God's going to draw out his army, and he's going to deliver them into your hands, and we're going to save all of Israel." And Barak's like, "Cool. If you come with me, I'll totally do this. But if you're not, then I'm not going to do this." So, what do you guys think of that? What's your impression of Barak after making a statement like that? Wanted a prophetess like an oracle. Okay. How does Bob even do this? Okay. So the first impression we get is that, yeah, Barak is scared. And he's like, I'll go to war, but only if you come with me. Now, there are a number of different interpretations of this. The first one, obviously, is that Barak was just being a chicken, not wanting to take the lead, not wanting to obey the command of the Lord without some sort of fair interpretation. There are a few other things. Culturally, it wasn't unheard of to take valuable possessions with you into battle as a sort of inspiration. Some have posed that this is Barak taking Deborah as an inspiration to the troops, bringing her, who was already set as the judge, as the ruler of Israel at that time. We know judging before this. Taking her would inspire the troops, seeing that this is God's hand upon this campaign. Kind of the seal of approval. At the same time, Deborah's the one that told Barak that God said to do this, so that kind of defeats the argument if you look at it. There's another reason, though. And I'm not saying that any one of these is particularly wrong or particularly right. It's very possible it's a combination of all of these. But when Deborah says, first you're supposed to go up to this particular place, she says, go to Mount Tabor. Now, Mount Tabor is up near Mount Galilee, the Sea of Galilee. It's on the western side. And it kind of is a place that kind of stands alone. It's very obvious, and it's just this place. Angers could probably describe it very well. I imagine that when he was over there, he might have seen it. I could be very wrong, though. But in mentioning this, it's white flag. You did, okay. And so it's posed that Mount Tabor was just very much an easy rallying point, a place where if you needed to get a bunch of guys together, if you need a meeting or assemble an army or a bunch of troops, it was a natural spot to do so. It was a mountain, so it gave you the height advantage. It was easily visible. It was tough to get lost on your way there, and it just made a lot of sense. So militarily, it was a very strategic and very important location. But it's also posed that Mount Tabor held a different kind of major significance. So if you flip back, and you guys don't have to do this, to the book of Deuteronomy, right at the end of Deuteronomy, in chapter 33, Moses is issuing his final blessings upon the tribes of Israel. Okay? And if you scroll down to verse 18, he starts talking about Zebulun, one of these northern tribes, one of the ones that's mentioned here by Deborah, telling Barak to assemble men from. So here's what he says, starting in verse 18 of Deuteronomy 33. And of Zebulun, he, Moses, said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. They shall call peoples to their mountain. They shall offer right sacrifices, for they draw from the abundance of the seas and the hidden treasures of the same. And it has been suggested, and remember I said that Mount Tabor was very not really much in the way of mount near around it. It's been suggested that Mount Tabor was a religious site where the people of Zebulun and other tribes would go to offer sacrifice. And if that's the case, then Barak may have been inviting or asking Deborah to go with him to offer a sacrifice at Mount Tabor to devote their actions and to devote themselves to God before they went to battle. And it's not unheard of to have a sacrifice before a battle. You guys know in the book of 1 Samuel, we have Saul. Part of his disobedience is that he made a sacrifice to the Lord before Samuel showed up before the battle. And so this isn't unheard of at all. So I think there's some real evidence that this is probably part of what Barak is thinking. Now, was he still the way in which he says it? Could he still have been a bit more manly about it? Yeah. I don't think there's any real debate as to whether or not he could have stated this or been a little bold on his statement, but he's not wrong in wanting to say, I want to make sure that God's with me in this. Remember, this guy has been cruelly oppressing the people of Israel for 20 years. And now Barak has been commanded to go up with 10,000 men, go to war with this dude who has 900 chariots, and Barak has 0. If he goes to war and he fails, it's not going to be good. So he wants to make absolutely certain that he has the Lord's blessing. Okay? Are you guys with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with that? I kind of want to see if anybody is like, that's heresy or something. Whatever. I don't want to like leave people behind. All right. Looks like we're in the good. Oh, Wise Rat's we're typing now. Oh, thank you. All right. So that's Barak's statement. And Deborah responds, she says, look, of course I'll come with you. But, she says, the road you're going on will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will will deliver, what's the word? Sell, there it is, gosh. Sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. I relate to Barak there. So, Deborah says, listen, you're going to go to war and you're going to be victorious. Israel will win, but you're not going to get the glory for conquering Sisera. Sisera's going to be delivered into the hand of a woman. Now, obviously, as a military leader, you want to capture the enemy general. That's the glory, and it makes you look, oh, it's awesome. Look what we did, Huzzah! My name's going to be recognized for conquering this general, and there's a lot of recognition and notoriety that came with that. But Deborah says, no, not this time. And what do you think Barak is thinking? He's just asked Deborah, a woman, to go with him to the battle that he's about to go up against. And she says, I will, but you're not going to get the glory. The general of the enemy army is going to be delivered to a woman. If I'm Barak, I don't think you could be blamed for thinking that Deborah's the woman that she's talking about. What other woman is he expecting there to be in a battle? It's interesting to think that it's possible that Barak he had the opportunity to think, well, she's just trying to steal the glory, but he still wants her to come along anyway. probably speaks to Deborah's character. So what happens? So Deborah rose, went with Barak to Kadesh, and Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men went up at his heels, and Deborah went up with him. So what happens? Exactly what Deborah told Barak to do. Like, total compliance. Everything that was supposed to happen has happened. Now, I have a special treat for you guys. Maybe not a special treat. That's probably not a good one. Let's see if I can make this work.
Mommy.
There we go. So this is a map of kind of the region where this is going to be taking. So up north there, you can kind of see Kadesh. And down below, kind of to the southwest of the Sea of Galilee, there in the middle, Sea of Chinnereth, you can see Mount Tabor. And that is the rallying point for these tribes. And you can kind of see the dotted lines where all the tribes were living. So you can see Zebulun and Issachar right there, just on the west side of the Jordan. Now remember where they said that King Jabin was ruling from? He was in Canaan, but he was ruling from this place called Harosheth. And Harosheth is over on the west side, and just inside the border of Asher there on the left. And it's on this Kishon River, and kind of on this open, or right beside the river Kishon, or the Kishon River. Kishon, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is this, by and large, it's mostly a plain, which makes sense. Again, Mount Tabor stands by itself. So on the one side, closer to the Jordan, you have all of Israel, the 10,000 dudes from Zebulun and Naphtali, rallied at Mount Tabor, and you have Sisera and the army, the Canaanite armies, gathered over here at Harosheth. So that's our situation when we come to the end of verse 10. Now, verse 11 kind of stands as its own little aside. It's kind of like, by the way, this is the thing that's happening. Keep it in mind. Not important yet. Anybody want to take verse 11 real quick? Okay, I'll take it. So verse 11. Now, Heber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the rest of the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak in Zananim, which is near Kadesh. Okay. So if you look back to the map, Zananim is just a little north of Mount Tabor. That's where this Heder or Heder guy is hanging out. He's got his tent. He's living in that region. So that's just this thing. Keep in mind, you have Israel at Mount Tabor. You have Sisera and his army with all the chariots over in Harosheth, and you have this Heder guy in Zananim. Okay. The map is super helpful here. So, all right. So next we get to the fun stuff. So verses 12 through 16, we actually get to the clash between these armies. That's what all the guys are waiting for. Yeah. So could someone read those? Joe taking it again. Go for it.
Yes. Who were the verses? I forgot already.
12 through 16.
Okay. And they showed Sisera, and Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor. And Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him from Harosheth of the Gentiles unto the river of Kishon. And Deborah said unto Barak, Up, for this is the day in which the Lord hath delivered Sisera into thine hand. Is not the Lord gone out before thee? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. And the Lord discomfited Sisera, and all his chariots, and all his host, with the edge of the sword before Barak. And that Sisera lightened down off his chariot, and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots, and after the host, unto Harosheth of the Gentiles. And all the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left.
Woo! Good guys win! All right. So here's the situation. We have Sisera chilling over in Harosheth, who finds out that there's this Israelite army that has assembled on Mount Tabor, which really isn't that far from Harosheth. So Sisera's like, rebellion, or some sort of insurgency. Like, can't have that. We got to go put this down. So he gathers up the 900 chariots and all the rest of the army, and they go out into this battle plain outside the river Kishon. And so Deborah, when the Israelite army finds out that they've drawn out, just like Deborah told Barak that God would, that Sisera had been drawn out, she says, "Listen, this is it. Everybody up. This is the time. This is when we get to attack, and you're going to defeat Sisera, and we're going to save Israel. This is the time." Now, here's the situation. Sisera and his army are down on the plain of Kishon. Barak and all of the Israelite armies are up on the mountain of Tabor. Which has the advantageous position? Correct. Yeah. It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. The Israelites have the high ground. They're on the mountain. Correct. I knew Bob would have that. And so you have all of Israel up on the high ground. And they're like, great, we have this mountain. We control this area. They have the advantageous position. What's more is that, for all intents and purposes, Sisera and his army control the field because they have the advantageous in technology. They have all these chariots which just rule on the plains. And so what you kind of have is that you have these two different armies which are, positioned as favorably as they can be. The Israelites are better on the high ground. Sisera's army is better on the low ground. Now, Deborah says, listen, everybody, let's go get them. So in order for Israel to go to battle, what do they have to do? If they're going to go after Sisera, and the place where they're at now is their most advantageous position, they have to forfeit their advantage and charge headlong into a place where the enemy has the advantage. Does that sound like a solid military strategy? Yeah, I don't think it really does either. However, it demonstrates that the people had trust in several different things. They trusted Deborah, for one, because she was the one that gave them the command to go. They trusted Barak, who was rushing into the battle, leading them militarily, and then they trusted God in that he was the one that had told Deborah in the first place, and they were going to go down and trust that he would deliver this vastly superior army in this location into their hands, in spite of the fact that every ounce of logic says that what they were doing was a bad idea. And the cool thing here is that you can see this throughout Scripture time and time again. It doesn't look like it should work, but that's because we're not supposed to be the ones getting the glory. This was a stupid military strategy. Let's be honest. You should not do this. If you're planning on going into like military studies, this is a bad idea. Sun Tzu would have a field day with it. But it wasn't about military strength. It was about the Lord who would draw out Sisera's army, and God would do the work. Yep, exactly, Joe. All right. So we come, Barak goes down Mount Tabor with 10,000 dudes being like, this is stupid. And in verse 15, I love the way this is worded. You have 10,000 dudes running down this mountain to go meet 900 chariots and who knows however many other 1,000 guys on foot in this army. And the very first thing that verse 15 says is, and the Lord routed Sisera. And it doesn't stop there. The Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. Whoo, boy. The Bible knows what happened. The Israelites acted in obedience, and God gave them victory.
So they rounded them all up.
The battle turned into a rout. All of the Canaanite army was just absolutely decimated, to the point that it says that Sisera got off of his chariot and fled on foot. Now, why would you do that? If you guys have ever seen a chariot race versus a foot race, you know that a chariot is probably faster than a guy on foot. Why would Sisera get out of his chariot and try to escape? To look like a common soldier. All right. He ran. Okay, yeah, you guys pretty much have nailed it. Panic probably played part of it, but probably not as much as we probably think. What it more likely was is that Sisera is a very important guy in this army. And as such, he probably had a little extra fanfare, a little extra size, a little bit more just his chariot probably was bigger and looked nicer and probably stood out so that his soldiers could recognize him and would pay attention when he was giving commands. It was meant to serve as a sort of mobile command station. He could give orders from that chariot. Now, the counter is true. If you, as the enemy soldiers, would look up and see this large chariot, you'd say, hey, that guy is probably the leader because he's got a nice chariot that's nice and big. Yeah, blinky license plate. Now, Sisera probably knew this and is thinking, battle's not looking real good. And if they happen to see this chariot, they're going to come for this one because they know that I'm the important guy. And the whole goal, you can end a battle very quickly if you capture the enemy leader. So Sisera is thinking, let's be clever, let's get out of the chariot so that they can't find me. Because he knows that he is, in this battle, public enemy number one. Get on foot, it's easier to hide, it's easier to not be recognized, and he's wanting to get away at this stage. Okay, so he's off, he's on foot, he is not with the main army. He is trying to get away from the battle. Meanwhile, as Sisera is slinking away, Barak and all the Israelites are they're chasing down chariots. What in the world? These chariots are running away from guys on foot, and the Israelites are catching. Sometimes you got to wonder, what did it look like? What did this battle look like? That must have been awesome. Now, a lot of people have attributed this to the possibility that because this was fought beside a river, that it's possible that it could have been flooded, or it may have been recent rains or something, unfortunate circumstances, so that the wheels of the chariots got caught up in muddy ground and were unable to get away. It's possible. Whatever the circumstances is that the Israelites absolutely destroyed this army completely. Bible says that not a man was left. That is what you call total victory.
Not even the famous Sisera.
Well, Sisera, we'll get to him.
No,
So,
four-wheel drive.
The entire army has been 100% destroyed, but there is no sign of the general. So our work isn't done. Now we need to get back to Sisera. So let's go and have someone read verses 17 through 20. Wise Rat coming in. All right. Go ahead, sir. I won't cut you off this time, I promise.
But Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. For there was peace between Jabin the house of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, and do not be afraid." So he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. And he said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said to her, "Stand at the opening of the tent, and if any man comes and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael...
Sorry, verse 20 is as far as we were going to go with that one. I'll let you pick up if we wanted, if you're up for it in a second. All right. So we've got Sisera, who's on foot. He runs off and he finds this guy or this tent of this guy that we mentioned back in verse 11. That little aside that we had, we're bringing it back. This is where it comes in. This Heber, the Kenite. And so he comes to this. He comes to the tent of Jael, who is the wife of this Heber. And so Jael, it's her tent. She comes out and sees him, and more than likely, because we see here in the passage that the house of Heber and the house of Jabin, the king of Canaan, were on good terms, and it's more than likely that Heber was actually kind of a sheik or the head of the family, or the head of a certain region or group or a tribe, and so he probably had a little bit of sway, a little bit of influence in the area. And as such, Jael would probably have been familiar with a few people, or at least the look of a soldier of Jabin. So she looks out and will probably recognize not only the armor or the design of, or possibly even the face of Sisera. And knowing that, she says, "Hey, I know you. I know that our houses are our houses are on friendly terms. Come on over here and swing in here for a sec." So he comes in, and she starts taking care of him. She covers him. He asks for some water, and that's a fair request. If you go back to the map that we were looking at, it's unclear where exactly Sisera turned back from, but that's not. It's not any short distance from the river the river Kishon up to Zananim, where this is happening. So if I ran all the distance, I would probably be asking for some water. But she doesn't do that. She actually opens a skin of milk. And milk was a lot, like way more of a provision. Water wasn't necessarily easy to get, but it was far easier to get than milk. Milk was considered precious. That's why when the Israelites talked about the Promised Land before they came in, they called it a land of milk and honey. And so Jael is giving Sisera some milk, kind of a recognition of sorts of his honored position, being a general of an army. And so after he's kind of recovering, kind of catching his breath, he says, "Look, stand at the opening of the tent, and if anyone comes and asks you, is anyone here, say no." Because he knows that the Israelite army probably is aware that they didn't get the general, and they're going to be looking for the general. And so he wants to have precaution against that. He says, "Okay, do me a favor. You've been super nice to me. Hang out at the opening of the tent, and if anybody comes around looking for me and just asking if anybody's here, just say no, and that'll keep me safe. Okay?" Are we good? We clear?
Yeah.
Awesome. Wise Rat, if you want to go through verse 22, you be my guest, sir.
But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand, and then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness. So he died. And behold, as Barak was pursuing Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, "Come, and I will show you the man who..." So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead with the tent peg in his temple.
Holy cow, did that turn fast? You come to the end of verse 20, and Jael's just taking nice care of him. He asks for water, she gives him some milk. She's giving him a blanket, letting him sleep in the tent. And so the dude dozes off, and she gets a tent peg and a hammer and proceeds to make him a permanent resident of the area. This is it's brutal.
That is savage.
There's been quite a bit of writing. Culturally speaking, when you take someone into your tent and begin to care for them, there's an understanding of, and this was probably what prompted Sisera to feel comfortable enough in going to sleep, that if someone comes into your tent and you provide for them, there is this idea of you are under their protection so long as you are in their home. Joe. All right. Wow. Okay. Stay focused, Scribe. So when Sisera comes in and he gets everything provided for him, okay, I am safe here so long as she doesn't tell anybody. So he goes to sleep. Well, she takes this opportunity. She's been toying with him the whole time. He goes to sleep. She goes off, gets his tent peg, and drives it through his temple right into the ground. I just love the way that after that happened, the Bible says, so he died. It's like, no joke! You think? Oh, man.
He's like, I'll take good care of you. Yeah, I'll take good care of you.
Oh, man. So it's been said that, and rightfully so, this was essentially straight up murder. This wasn't honorable or noble in any way. It was expected culturally that once you were there, you were to take care of this person, and she did.
A true psychopath.
Not quite in the way that I think Sisera expected, but she took care of him. And so then, sometime later, we were not sure exactly how much. Barak Israel's out looking for Sisera. They've killed everybody else off from the Canaanite army. They're looking. Jael sees them coming. Says, "Hey, come here, and I'm going to show you the guy you're looking for." Now, remember, Barak got told by Deborah that God would deliver Sisera into the hand of a woman, and probably up until this point, he's thinking it's Deborah. Imagine his surprise when he walks into the tent of this woman, and there's Sisera looking like he's got a splitting headache.
You got a
I'm
splitting
sorry.
headache, all right.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm so sorry. And so Barak sees kind of the fulfillment of this prophecy, but not probably in the way he was expecting. Now, it's also been suggested, why would Jael do this? It says that her husband and the king of the Canaanites, Jabin, were on good terms. They were friendly with each other. Why would she do this? What possible reason could she have for just apparently out of the blue doing this?
Because she's a psychopath.
She's a better memory than her husband. What do you mean by that, Kes?
I don't know.
No,
how
I
much of
see.
this I can
Oh.
get out without baby commentary, but the Kenites are related to the Israelites, and Sisera's been oppressing them cruelly for 20 years.
And that's definitely a possibility because the Kenites. You know who else was a Kenite? Caleb was a Kenite. Othniel was a Kenite. Few people we've had being Kenites up to this point. So yeah, the idea that Jael, being having relation to the family of the Kenites, wanting to get a little revenge on the guy that is oppressing some of her semi-blood relatives is very plausible. Another thing is a slightly less honorable. is that if you look at the map, depending upon where or how how you saw the battle going along this entire region, or where Xananim, what its vantage point was, Jael could have seen the outcome of the battle, and could very well have seen that the Israelites absolutely routed Sisera's army. And so when Sisera happens to come to her tent, she's thinking, I have an instantaneous method to get in good with the Israelites by taking out the general of this army. And she waits until he's vulnerable, and then, as Joe put it so well, she nailed him. And that's part of it, Wise Rat. If she had seen the battle, she would have known. So, there's a lot of plausibility here. A lot of things that are kind of insinuated, but not necessarily just out and out stated. A lot of hypotheticals, but yeah, that's it's definitely interesting. A lot of things that you can read into this, but that's very dangerous. So you kind of interpret. Difficult to be dogmatic, but again, that's kind of, as we say, somewhat frequently, you can get bogged down in a lot of the minutia and miss the big picture. I'll finish out with the last two verses. So on that day, God subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the people of Israel. Okay, and so now we have a little bit of the tides turning. Because remember, the army's all gone. And now Israel's like, oh, we just have 10,000 guys who just happen to be here, not too far from Harosheth. And it says that the hand of the people of Israel pressed harder and harder against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. And it's difficult to remain an oppressor when you don't have any means of. And so we see the full deliverance of God, saving the people of Israel by completely destroying the army until the point where they until they completely destroy the king who had been oppressing them for 20 years. So there we go. That is Judges chapter 4. Now we're not done with Deborah yet. Got another chapter of her. But what can we take from chapter 4? What can we take from this story of Deborah and Barak? Other than the fact that I can't figure out how to pronounce Barak. I pronounced it both ways. Difficult to say, Wise Rat. I believe that Deborah was going to go with Barak regardless if he asked or not. But it's interesting to note that it was only after he said what he did that Deborah said that he wouldn't that Sisera would be delivered in the hand of a woman. So, easy to hypothesize about that, but again, minutia. God is stronger than any army. Yeah, very much so. God doesn't care how many chariots you got. Seen a couple people type. It's like when I'm on a mic, nobody else wants to talk unless they're reading. I guess I can go ahead and mention I love the idea, or just as a guy, I'm natural. Battle is kind of this fun thing. These physical feats of strength, even though I'm not a very athletic guy. I love this the demonstration of just this almost, I guess you could call it reckless faith on behalf of Barak and the Israelites. They hold the high ground on Mount Tabor, and their enemy, who is stronger in the valley, is waiting down there where they should, by all rights, completely just wipe the floor with the Israelite army. And yet, in full faith and confidence in God, they run down from their position of strength into a position of weakness and watch God just do amazing things. And I think that's just so beautiful. In that, what we see as a strength or a position of strength, God says, I don't care about that. That's cool, but have you not heard that I'm God? I once heard it said, and it was put just so well. It said that you and God are a majority. Go with God, and you will always be in a position of strength. Yep. God of the impossible. I love that. I know it's already after 10 o'clock or whatever o'clock where you guys are. But I mean, you came and you know what to expect. Yeah. Yep. God is able to supersede any military plan. He showed that. We'll see that again here in the book of Judges. There's a pretty famous story coming up in a couple chapters where God picks a few hundred men and routs a ginormous army. But yeah. You guys have a lot of insight on this. You guys are just typing away. Oh, something like that, Guess. something Isaiah 55. Awesome stuff, guys. So yeah, I think more than anything is the idea that we can take from Barak both the good and the bad. He wanted a double sense of assurance. He wanted to make sure that God was with him. That he was he was scared, admittedly. And by human terms, he had every right to be. Jabin and Sisera were scary guys. But I think he wanted, in a large sense, to make sure that God was with him, and he wanted Deborah to come with him as that guarantee, to make sure that what he was doing wasn't done in his own strength, but in the strength of the Lord. And by that same token, when he had that assurance, when he knew, he was willing to leave a position of his own power and trusting in his own might and his own position and stepping out in faith where there was little chance of victory and watching God deliver it to him anyways. It's awesome stuff. Next week, we get to deal with a song. And I can't wait to hear what Ungerth say about that. No, that's going to be Ongerth next week. I think it's going to be Ongerth next week. I'm hoping that he will affirm that because I'm looking right at him and hoping that he's listening and will affirm that. Please, Ongerth, help me.
Negative.
Yes!
No Bible study. Negative. No Bible study next week, guys.
Oh, that's right. Next week, Thanksgiving. I apologize.
That's okay. Yeah. So no Bible study next week. In 2 weeks, I will actually be hosting another event at that college that I'm alumni of.
You need me to take chapter 5 too?
Well, if you're off work, if not, then we can just do a prayer study.
Okay. My
we'll talk later.
schedule. Let's see. That's a Thursday. What day of the week is that? That's going to be the 5th.
5th. Yep, December 5th.
I am not sure. I know that I got an email from my pastor because our live nativity is going to be going on that weekend, and so I know the dress rehearsals are going on. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here that week. I'll